On today's episode of A Taste of Honey TV, we have seasoned soap, film, actor, and director Marcello Rallando with guest host Laura Rikard. You are watching A Taste of Honey TV. So you want to be a model, an actress, a producer, a musician. So you want to be in the entertainment or media industry.
We show you the ins and outs of the entertainment and media industry.
Our main goal is to educate and inspire those interested in the entertainment and media industry.
You are watching A Taste of Honey TV.
Hi, and welcome to Taste of Honey. I'm your host for today, Laura Rikard, and I'm an actress, director, and teacher, and I'm really excited to be interviewing our guest today because he is a veteran actor, director, political talk show, radio host, Marcello Rallando.
Oh, thank you. That's quite an impressive list. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
So you've got quite a story. You've done everything from soap operas to writing your own radio show to directing. Many people here in our Charlottesville area may have seen him last summer in Barefoot in the Park at the Heritage Theater. Wonderful performance, by the way.
That's actually 2 summers ago. Last summer was,
it was
She Loves Me.
It was 2 summers ago. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. You're right. And you did She Loves Me as well.
Yes.
Yes. Well, congratulations and thank you for all the work you've done around here. But today we want to hear about your background, how you got started, how you got into the theater. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you're from and what first took you to the big lights of New York City to start your career.
I was kicked out of town. It was the best thing ever that happened to me. I was born in Washington, D.C., and so through college years, Peabody Conservatory, Towson State, Catholic University, I was directing professionally before I had a degree in it. And at one point, after the major papers had reviewed me favorably, a producer I was working with just sat me down and said, you know, it's time for you to leave, because after the Washington Post says you're good and the Baltimore Sun says you're good,
it's time for the New York Times to say
exactly,
you're good.
You know? So that's what happened. I did a very foolish thing. I don't necessarily recommend it. It worked for me, but God takes care of people who can be foolish sometimes. And I simply bought a one-way ticket, train ticket to Manhattan. I packed 1 suitcase. I did not have a place to live. I did not have a job. But I did have a friend up there with whom I'd been in a show, 2 or 3 years prior to this. We'd gone on a tour or something. And as a matter of fact, I was called to go into that tour. It played in New York, and I was in the New York show. Then they went off on tour. And,
what production was that?
Oh, I don't remember. It was something about Alexander Graham Bell, and I played his father who gave him the money and all that stuff. It's been a long time ago. I think it toured schools. But in any case, the guy who replaced me when they went on tour got sick, and they called me and asked if I could come and join the tour. And on the tour, I met this new Alexander Graham Bell. And he just said offhandedly one day, if you ever come to New York, give me a call. And I kept his name and number. I don't know why. But I arrived at Penn Station. Holding my suitcase between my legs in Penn Station so nobody could snatch it while I was on the payphone. So that tells you how long ago it was. And called this guy and told him I was in town and I needed a place to stay. And he said, stay right there. He took the number, stay right there, and I'll call you back. And he called back about 10 minutes or so. And evidently at the same time, he was trying to arrange to leave town with his girlfriend who couldn't go because her girlfriend had to watch this apartment because of that boyfriend going, it was a whole thing. But I evidently solved all their problems because everyone could go away if I would watch the apartment for a year.
Yeah.
And, water the plants and feed the cat or whatever. And I said yes, and so bingo, there I was. And next day I got a temp job that encouraged, not just allowed, me to go out and have auditions. I was very lucky.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an important point when you're in this industry and in this business, remembering who you've met, making friends, and connecting with those people.
Absolutely.
I mean, when I took the bus to New York from South Carolina and got an apartment because someone I had known was moving to LA, and otherwise I would have never found an apartment. So it's knowing these people and they remembering you oftentimes is just as important as being good at the audition.
Absolutely.
So what was your first paid gig in New York?
It was King of the Gypsies, with a very thin, skinny little 11-year-old Brooke Shields.
Oh, wow.
Judd Hirsch, who was a lot of fun to work with. Sterling Hayden, who most people won't remember, but I remembered from as a kid watching him on black and white TV. And I can't remember who else was in it, but in any case, Sylvia Fay was the big casting director in those days. And she cast me as she's a rough, tough cookie. I really enjoyed working with her. I enjoyed knowing her.
And she's a legend.
She's absolute legend.
In the business.
Absolutely. And but anyway, she decided that I was going to be good in this movie, and even when the director, who was handing out these coded cards to say where he wanted to use, blue card, yellow card, green card, he had his system. But Sylvia Fay was sitting beside him, and I don't know what he handed me, but he hesitated for a moment, and she just tapped him and pointed to another color. And so he went, yeah, and he picked up that color. Anyway, it ended up that I was the bodyguard for Judd Hirsch. No, I was the bodyguard for Sterling Hayden, who was the king of the Gypsies. Yeah. And I didn't do a good job because Judd killed him in the movie, if I remember. I don't think I ever saw the movie. But,
well, you did a good job of being a bad bodyguard.
Yes, that was it. So it was good. He got shot, and Judd and I worked on his lines in between every shot. He was running lines for whatever he was on Broadway then. I can't remember what the show was.
And I think that's a really... especially for novice actors and being a new actor on a new set, working with these big name actors. Any advice for protocol, how to behave, how to approach these people? Because I know when I've been on set, I often see people make a lot of mistakes. So any advice that you would give for someone who maybe has just been cast for the first time on a big budget film with some large names, which we have recently had that happen in the neighborhood? Well,
yes, I have tons of advice. But I am primarily a director, so it comes natural to me to give advice to actors, and there are things you people throw around the word professionalism. You're not professional this or unprofessional that, and really professionalism is just respecting everyone's space and what their job is in this particular thing that's going on. It doesn't matter whether it's a receptionist or a name, a star or whatever. You need to know, and of course yourself as well. You have to respect what your job is. So if you're there doing your job, you're not interfering with someone else trying to do theirs, and that's the big thing. And going back to, again, giving King of the Gypsies as I don't know why I'm mentioning that so much, but it was the first. It's your fault. King of the Gypsies. The first
but we're all going to Netflix it now.
It couldn't have been, yes, it couldn't have been my first movie, because this happened at 4 a.m. on a bus full of extras, an agent whose name I cannot remember. When I came to the bus, she said, "Everybody, pay attention." And she introduced me. This is Marcello Rallando. Now I was an extra just like they were. And it was King of the Gypsies. And she must have been from Sylvia Fay's office. She said, "We call Marcello all the time, because when Marcello's on the set, he does the very best he can do to do what he's told to do. And he's always where we want him to be. Don't wander off. Be where you're supposed to be." And I remember that and thought, how wonderful that was her impression of me. And that wasn't about acting.
Yeah.
That was about showing up on time, being where you're supposed to be when they need you, and doing the best you can do, period. So that's probably my biggest advice. Don't presume, don't push. Don't be, scared to death to ask a question, but just know why you're there. And most of the people who are there trying to do their job, and so they don't want to be interfered with.
And I think remembering that you're there to be a supporting player when you get those beginning smaller roles. And part of being a supporting player is learning by watching the people who have the leading roles. So I think that's great advice.
The Reasonable Voice is primarily the identity or the brand under which I work as a political writer.
Okay,
Which spans
great.
everything from blogs to op-eds to articles, online newspapers, to several campaigns and candidates that I write for. But at the same time, the way the radio perhaps has slipped in there in your notes is that I am, I just got a promotion, as a matter of fact. I work on radio news here in Charlottesville and just left my Saturday shift, as a matter of fact. But I've also just been asked to host, starting next week, Charlottesville This Week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll be seeing you on Charlottesville this week.
So you will be. Yeah.
And you were in a soap?
Oh, I was in several soaps, but
Which,
but
please
the
fill
one,
us in.
well, you know, it's like anything. When you go to New York, you audition. It's not that New York is just waiting for you to show up, but you go, you audition, and I got on a number of smaller parts. And again, just to be not take too long, but it all started because, and I've told this story many times to students and other interviews. I was at an audition for Search for Tomorrow, and the receptionist asked, no, she didn't ask. I offered when I was leaving, the air conditioner wasn't working, and I said, you know, can I bring you a glass of water? And she said, please, and she gets the water, and 2 years later she calls me for an audition.
Wow.
And said to me, she remembered me because I had been so kind to her, whereas some of the actors in the room, you know, hadn't been. And that led to my doing extra work on Another World, which led to when casting directors changed, I got the part of Franco. And I played Franco on NBC's Another World for about 10 years. So it all came from being kind enough just to say, can I bring you a glass of water? So in this business, it's about more than just acting, is my point. You show up on time, you do your best, and you pay attention and learn.
And be kind to everyone, as you should be anyway.
Yeah.
But you never know, someone who's a secretary today may be casting you tomorrow.
Especially in this business, because no one, I don't think, anywhere really chooses to be a receptionist all their life. And generally, if you start at an entry level in any business, but certainly in show business, it's because you want to learn and move up. Many, 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 many agents' offices and casting directors' offices, I know the casting directors now, and I met them when they were receptionists.
So speaking of that, what is really the difference between acting for film, TV, soap operas, and theater, and even the difference between behavior on set?
Well, I don't know that there's much difference in behavior. It's still, as I was saying before, it's still about showing up on time and being where you're supposed to be and doing what they ask you to do to the best of your ability. I mean, that's the actor's life. As far as other differences, you know, I mean, as I often tell actors, theater you use a shotgun, and in film you use a laser beam. You know, so it's but it's still the same energy coming from inside. And of course, on camera, the eyes are extremely important. Whereas in theater, you don't always you need to act. The whole body probably is equally important. In film and TV, the director tends to, of course, have the power to control what the audience is looking at because of the framing and what the shot is, as opposed to in theater, the audience can choose from stage left, right, up, and down. So those are kind of basic things, but still the bottom line is you go in and do the best you can do, and by that I mean even from the beginning, an audition is about how you arrive and your attitude, and you toe the mark, you know where you're supposed to be. You're not there to make friends and influence people, you're there to audition. And when you do so, you're prepared and you listen. The toughest thing I think for actors to do is to learn the art of listening, and it's just as important for them from the audition as well as in the wings or off set or off camera as it is on camera. But that listening quality is something that has to be developed because we're not built that way. We're thinking about what we're going to say next instead of listening, because generally speaking, especially for most directors, I think, perhaps I'm prejudiced, but a director generally will tell you exactly what they want if you're listening. Casting directors are not always directors, but they speak a different language that's perhaps more abbreviated and simplistic, but it's still the same thing. You know, when they when they talk tempo or volume or intention, that's their way of expressing something that a director might do a little more aesthetically or whatever.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the actor has to listen and respond to what's being asked. In a theater production, you have an awful lot of time. Well, it doesn't always seem that way, of course, but I guess you never have enough time. But you rehearse for a large period of time and have time to write things down. In film, the repetition of the shots will often give you a chance to do something over repeat enough times, and if you're the kind of actor who each time adds a ripple, then, and the director is the type who gives you those extra shots, then you have time, but it's not like rehearsing in a theater.
Yeah.
In soap operas, there's no such thing. There isn't. I can remember very well my first time on a soap opera, and showing up with a script and a pencil. Well, a pencil doesn't do you any good in soap operas, because your rehearsal tends to be 7 in the morning, depending on when your call is, but mine was always early, so 7 a.m. And you are in for a dry rehearsal, they call it, in a green room sort of setup, and it's just chairs that denote the set. And when you say this, you go there. When you say this, you go there. When you say this, you go there. And then checking with the stage manager to make certain that time works for the in-between commercials. And then that's it. And you go downstairs. And when you're downstairs, the director, that is on the set. When you're on the set, the director now has 3 cameras and cameramen. And he's talking to them primarily, expecting you to do what he told you to do upstairs 3 hours ago. And then he'll say notes and taping next, and come out and give you notes, and while he's giving you notes, the makeup people and the costume people are doing whatever they need to do, which is another difference from film. In film, that tends to be done. Well, that's not true either. I just did a major film project that I can't talk too much about, but sure, hair and makeup, they were all over me in between every take.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not very different from soaps in that sense.
Well, it's about multitasking, it sounds
Yes.
like, and like you said, listening and immediately being able to put what you've heard into action.
Yes.
There's not much time for processing. So as a director, we know as actors, part of our job is learning how to get the job, how to audition, how to behave at an audition, what to wear, what to do. As a director, when you have auditioned, I know you may not have always done your own casting, what are some of the major mistakes you see maybe actors make across the board in auditions, and what are some of the things that often help the person get the job?
Well, I hope you will be astounded and shocked by some of the things I will mention. I think the worst mistakes that I've seen as a director from actors is a resume without a telephone number on it.
Oh, wow.
Or any other contact information. I've seen that a number of times. I've seen actors come in and their first introduction to me is their rear end, because they will come in and put down their things facing away from me. That's not necessarily the first impression you want to make. I've seen actors come in and say, "Where would you like me?" And I think I always teach my students because it's easy. It's easy for theater too, for that matter, because they generally mark something or they've lit it where you're supposed to go. But for a TV audition or a film audition, there tends to be a mark on the floor, and the camera in the room is pointing in that direction. So if you don't know that, you are telling them, "I've never done this before." And there's nothing wrong with a beginner, but there's everything wrong with an amateur. Anybody can be a beginner, we know, because people begin, all right? That's fine. But a beginner still knows certain basics, and they come in and do what they can. So you're friendly, you give a handshake, you hello, but that's that's the extent of that, and then go right to that mark and be ready to do whatever they ask you to do.
Yeah, get out of my space. Go take your space. And
I've always said that there should be a hello of some type, and I'll give you, but you have to see how it plays. Barry, big New York casting director, wonderful guy. Barry, and I can't think of his last name, and that's a shame. He deserves to be remembered because he's excellent. In any case, I went up to shake his hand, and I realized he had coffee cup in one hand and a pen in another. So instead of shaking his hand, I stopped because he'd have to fidget, and just a hello was fine. But other people they'll come out and they'll extend their hand, especially film guys. They always want to say hello and whatever.
Yeah, and I know when I've directed, I'll have actors sometimes ask, well, what are you looking for?
Oh, please
and that's
don't
the
ever
worst
do that.
question.
Don't ever
ask me that.
It's a terrible thing. It's sad that some directors don't know what they're looking for, but at the same time, they are also looking for you to show them something and what you do with it. Also, even in the audition process or rehearsal process, or in this film I just finished, I saw. And I have been a director who does this, but it's been done to me as an actor, and that is, the director wants to see your choices, and then they'll ask for their choices. So you give them strong choices of what that's your best. Your first thing is to show them you can act.
Yes.
Then your next thing is to show them you can take direction.
Yes.
And that's what they're looking for. But I wish I could mention the names, but it's a household name. It's an amazing actor I've always admired. In all, excuse me, in all these wonderful movies, and he gets sort of typecast in this gruff and rough type, which he does extremely well. But in this film I just finished, masterful genius of a director working with him, gave him this one line he had, which had already been done extremely well. Everybody was impressed, and I'm sure it was just to have choices and just to allow the actor to discover things, rather than, okay, that was wonderful, let's move on. So the direction was, try that as though she did this. Try that as though this just happened. Do it again as though this. Now this time this. And he just went right down this litany of a dozen different choices. And every time, this amazing actor took a moment, and I was close enough to him on the set so that I could see those wheels a bit. He'd take a moment, and then he'd do the line. And then he'd take a moment after the next direction, and he'd do the line. And every time, the line was not only different, it was exactly what the director had asked for him, but he went through this entire rainbow of emotions. And it was just remarkable. And after that was finished, when the director finally said cut, we all leapt to our feet and applauded. It was an amazing thing to witness, which is another thing, again, about the listening. How much could be learned by just experiencing that kind of moment.
Well, and they say Marlon Brando sat in the back of his acting class an entire year before he got up and performed, just watching and learning. So, that watching and listening and learning is so important, so important. And it's great to hear someone with your background say that and reiterate that.
Well, it still is. Doesn't matter how much you do. You still have to watch and listen and show up one time and do what they tell you to do, and and be glad to be there. It's, I often say, I'm having a time of my life, whether it's radio, theater, television, or film, and they pay me lots of money to do it. And for the most part, there are lots of wonderful people to be around. I mean, the higher you go up, my experience has been, the higher you go up, the more they have arrived, serious about their work, and having the time of their lives doing it.
Yeah, I've had a similar opportunity to work with a master director. I can't talk about it either. But I will say she was the kindest director I ever saw.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know what you mean.
They don't have to prove themselves anymore, and they can just be kind. What would a piece of advice would you give an actor? They've got the job, they've been cast, they're new, they're fresh, and they're at that first day of rehearsal or first day of shooting. I always say, once I've been cast, I suddenly feel like an idiot. I'm like, why did they cast me? What were they? I get really nervous, and I want to just, please the people that have cast me. What piece of advice do you give for somebody who's getting that first big job and they're on set at rehearsal, whatever it is, for that first day?
That's interesting. I'm glad you talk about learning. You just said something to me that answers a question that I've wondered for many years as a director. When actors come in and do a marvelous audition and call back, and I cast them, and I'm looking forward to working with them, and then this different person arrives at rehearsal. And I just expect it now. It doesn't bother me anymore. I just expect it, and we build that relationship. And it's not everyone, but there's always one or two. And I've often wondered, what is that about? And I think maybe some of that is, oh my God, I'm here now, what do I do? Because when I think back of my first time, my very first day on a major, all the soaps are major, so they're all major, but this time I had a role, speaking role. It wasn't, I had done one-liners, I had done a day or a few weeks or whatever on several soaps, including a little stint for a few months with the Beach Boys. On,
oh, wow.
On
you've been with everybody.
Yeah, with they were fun too. Fun guys, very fun guys, and still are. What was the One Life to Live? But when I was on NBC's Another World playing Franco, there was, of course, a first day. And I had, of course, read the script, and I knew what it said. And in TV land, most of the scripts, most of the directions are about the camera. They're not about you. But reading what the cameras were supposed to be doing, I figured out where I was supposed to be. And I'm sure a full 15 minutes before I needed to be in that position, I was standing there and ready to go. And the camera and lights and the sound, all those people were working, and I'm standing on set and no actor was there, no director. And I was, Linda Dono, who played Felicia Gallant, came over to me the first day, and she said, "Hi, you must be Franco." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm Linda Dono." And that was it. She didn't even extend her hand. She actually held my arm and said, "We're going to be great together." And we were for 10 years. It was
wow.
just, and there were lots of wonderful people there. Well, in soaps, or film too, you spend so many hours in a day and a week with these people. That they are family. You see them more than you see your family at home.
Well, it's incredibly long days. Yeah. You're there before the sun comes up, and you're there long after the sun goes down.
And you eat together, and it's so comprehensive, so intense, and so anyway, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
You did.
Yeah, good.
Yes, so many times. One more question. Mm-hmm. What piece, if you could sum up in one sentence, a piece of advice to someone that would come to you and say, "I just love acting, I just want to be in this business, I know I want to make film or theater, I know that's what I want to do." In one sentence, could you sum up what you might say back?
Understand what that means. Mm-hmm. I think actors tend to, I say to them, that I've met actors who have the talent to act, and I've met actors who have the desire to act. I don't get overly excited about either, but when I meet an actor who has the talent and the drive, that's when I get excited. So you need both. The talent is a wonderful thing, and it is essential. It's not all essential, but it is important. But the drive to be able to get up and go out and audition and to work on your craft and never really think that you've reached a point. I mean, no one less than Colleen Dewhurst told me this, and she was, of course, when she told me this, she was. If you
don't know who Colleen Dewhurst is, you should know who Colleen Dewhurst is.
And she was a lot more than George C. Scott's wife.
Yes.
Which I was fortunate enough not to mention when I did meet her. And meeting her was an amazing experience too. But she said, you're never finished.
No.
You're never finished. No. And if you think you are, then, So you're always studying and you're always working in something. And that's, I guess, the greatest advice, that you're constantly after the work and doing the work as best you can until the work isn't work anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time for us to take another short break.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll be back in a few minutes to finish up our conversation with Mr. Marcello Rallando.
A Taste of Honey TV, sponsored in part by A Taste of Honey Media Group. Web, print, TV, radio, talent bookings. Media is what we do. Sponsored in part by A Taste of Honey Mini Mag. All your favorite interviews, industry advice, and more in a convenient paperback. Get your free copy today. On next episode of A Taste of Honey TV, we have a great lineup of some hot live performances from the 2012 summer, including Maroon 5, Wiz Khalifa, Dietrich Haddon, and many more. So catch the next episode of A Taste of Honey TV. remember, for more interviews, behind the scenes clips, and industry advice straight from the pros, log on to atasteofhoneytv.info.
The brackish water